Hey everybody, welcome back to All Fiction is Fantasy. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on All Fiction is Fantasy, we are going to be taking a look at Volume 1 of the Don Rosa Library, and this is the first volume of his Duck comic strips featuring Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck. And this is from Fantagraphics Books. Return to Duckburg. The richest duck in the world is back, and so are noisy nephew, Donald, whiz kids Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and rascally Flint Heart Gloamgold. This is the first complete chronological book of duck adventures by fan favorite Don Rosa. Following in the footsteps of Disney legend Carl Barks, with a style all his own. Rosa, famed for his Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, an excellent comic book. Can't wait to be taking a look at that. But he created a whopping 2 decades worth of ripping Scrooge and Donald yarns, along with The Son of the Sun, an epic battle for Incan treasure. This volume includes Cash Flow, a Beagle Boy attack on the laws of physics, and The Last Sled to Dawson, starring Scrooge's old flame, Glittering Goldie, bundled with a bin load of Rosa's cover art and behind-the-scenes factoids. These Duckburg epics are getting a comprehensive edition for the very first time. These comics are a lot of fun. They have a ton of adventure. If you were a fan of DuckTales growing up and you have not read these, I do highly encourage you to read them because they are a lot of fun. Being from Fantagraphics Books, you know that the quality is going to be off the charts. Very well constructed, stitched binding, nice hardback with a whole host of archival content. And it's the archival content that I really find valuable in these kinds of compilations. The book opens with a preface written by Don Rosa where we kind of learn about his history as a comic strip artist. He was not always going to be a comic strip artist. He was a fan artist, and he was actually going to take over his family's construction business, but he had a serendipitous encounter where he ended up taking over the reins of Uncle Scrooge and Donald Duck, and his hero, his childhood hero, his lifelong hero was Carl Barks, the creator of Uncle Scrooge, and made all of the duck characters in Disney's world popular. And Don Rosa just kind of idolized Carl Barks. And he talks about how he idolized him as a kid growing up, and he always wanted, he felt like it was his lifelong goal to draw Donald Duck and Scrooge comics. And he actually got that opportunity. So really cool story about Don Rosa's introduction to the comic book industry. The first story here is The Son of the Sun, and it is here that you might, reading these in a modern light, you might have some issues with old Scrooge McDuck. He's a terrible, terrible capitalist. He is, in any other story, a character like Uncle Scrooge would be the villain. He's a miser. He pays his nephews. He pays them 30 cents an hour to do jobs for him. He exploits indigenous people. All he cares about is money, and all he cares about is getting more money. And it is it is a little odd reading these stories in modern light. They are still fun. They're still adventurous. But yeah, if you're anti-capitalist at all, you're going to have some troubles with old Scrooge. I also always love the shoes that Scrooge wears, that some of the ducks wear. I don't know what the name of that style of shoe is, or if it has a name. They only cover the tops of his webbed feet there. Interesting, but I love Don Rosa's art and his sense of adventure. These Scrooge comics, the comics here, in these collections, they alternate between Scrooge stories and Donald stories. The Donald stories are more comical. They're more centered around pratfalls and comical situations, whereas the Scrooge stories are more centered around pulp adventure, treasure hunting, treasure seeking, exploiting indigenous people. Because he's always going to all of these various poor countries and taking their treasure back and adding it to his vault for his own financial gain. But look at that panel there with this giant Incan temple. I love that. There is a simplicity to Rosa's art, but he is also able to convey a lot of emotion, a lot of comical expressions, and yeah, just really, really good art. Great colors. The reproductions here are really nice. They did a great job. The paper is nice. Everything is clean and well presented. This strip here is where Scrooge gives Donald and Gladstone Gander, his other nephew, he gives them each $1,000 to invest to try to make something of their lives with. Because the only thing that matters to Scrooge is money, and the only value a person has is how much money they have. And of course, knowing Donald, knowing Gladstone, all kinds of hijinks ensue, and they both are terrible at investing their money, and Donald makes a complete mess of it, whereas Gladstone, because of his supernatural good luck, investments are always falling in his lap, but he ends up screwing up as well, and Scrooge ends up having to reconcile his feelings for his nephews that they will never be rich like him. We have this comic here, this strip here. So Huey, Dewey, and Louie were part of the Junior Woodchucks, of course, kind of this world's Boy Scouts. One thing that Don Rosa does point out in his introduction is he views all of the animal characters as people in his world. So I will often also refer to them as people, as persons. But they are out looking for animals in the wilderness, and Donald decides to be really nasty and play tricks on his nephews, and he goes to a local farm and gets these farm animals and disguises the farm animals as these wacky mythological beasts. And so the nephews are taking notes on these crazy mythological beasts that Donald is trying to trick them with. And this is probably my favorite of the comedy sketches in here is Donald once a year takes his favorite car and he strips it completely down to the chassis. Once a year he does this in order to maintain his car, to clean it, and to give it a really thorough checkup. Well, while Donald has all of his parts on his yard, his neighbor puts up a yard sale sign and his car gets purchased piece by piece. And so Donald has to go around the neighborhood and buy all of the parts of his car back from all of the people who took it. Cash flow here is one of the Scrooge stories, and here is his vault of money. I think Scrooge has something like 20 acres of money. He measures it in depth. We're up to 99 feet of money there, cubic feet, I should say. And in this story here, the Beagle Brothers, so this is our introduction to the villains, because Scrooge is actually kind of a villain, but they are trying to break into his vault, and they get these magic ray guns that can change the laws of physics. And so they try to use those in order to break into the vault. Lots of fun, lots of hijinks. Waves and waves of money come pouring through Duckburg there. Another Donald Duck story about Christmas trees there. That reminds me of one of my favorite Mickey Mouse cartoons where he and Pluto go out to get their Christmas tree and they bring it back in and they discover that the chipmunks are living in the Christmas tree. And then we have a big kind of epic Scrooge story here, The Last Sled to Dawson, where we learn a little bit about Scrooge's past. He was a Yukon. He went to pan for gold in the Yukon, and we'll learn a lot more about Scrooge's past when we read the life and times of Scrooge McDuck. And throughout the issues that are collected, because it's in chronological order, you're going to see a lot of artistic progression in Don Rosa's skill, his layouts, his ink work. It all gets very, very good, even though I think it started pretty strong. He mentions quite a few times in the archival material in his commentary about how poor his art was in these old issues. I don't see it. I think it looks pretty good. But, you're always your own worst critic. And so each of the collections also features these behind the scenes commentary where Don Rosa talks about his inspiration. He discusses secret Easter eggs that he would hide in the panels. He was really into hiding Easter eggs everywhere. He talks about some of his earlier comic strips that he did for his college, I believe, his college newspaper, and how those would sometimes influence his duck stories. Here we have Donald's car from one of the Disney cartoons, Don Donald, from 1937. So his favorite car is also depicted in the stories here. And then each of the collections will also feature some, man, look at that. That is amazing. This is the cover for The Last Sled to Dawson from 1988. I love that cover. I love the colors are so good. There's a Carl Barks, one of the originals there. But each of the collections will also include some archives with some alternate covers and art from the various issues that the collection contains. And here we have the life and times of Don Rosa, a biography on Don Rosa, and this is part 1, The Last of the Clan Rosa. And his birth name was Kino Rosa. Kino, that's a cool name. That's a name I've never heard before. But all in all, this is a fantastic collection. I have all of the issues of the Don Rosa Library, and we will be taking a look at those for the next year or so. So, all right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this look at the Don Rosa Library Volume 1. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.